Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have Ilya Rekhter from DoubleMap. Ilya, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right, let's hear about DoubleMap. What do you guys do?
DoubleMap, we do software for transit. So from a high level, customers really know us for having apps for catching the bus. So as a rider, you can actually see when the bus is coming. That's the product called DoubleMap. We have a second one called TapRide, and that's actually an Uber for public transit. And then for administrators, because those apps really are free, we have analytics so they can make efficient routing decisions. They can count passengers, get funding, all of that. And really where we make a lot of kind of inroads and frankly our money is inside of the bus. If you actually can visualize walking into a bus, it's like walking back in time into like the 1970s as far as technology. You have all these systems that don't talk to one another. So a bus driver basically has to do all of those things manually. So counting passengers, they either have a clicker system that's not connected to anything, or they have pen and paper in a lot of cases. Counting cash, fares, same thing. Oftentimes they have a cash box and then somebody has to physically count all of that money. Same thing for the head signs on the front of the bus when you can see a bus driving down the street. If it says it's on the A route, bus drivers have this kind of coded system where they have to associate some kind of weird PIN number with the A route and they have to code that in. Announcements they have to make verbally. And at the end of the day, they're supposed to be driving a bus. So we integrate all of those systems. So it's all done in real time, automated, and it works seamlessly.
Real quick, only because when we first got to know you, you were working with colleges mostly, I think at the time. That's where you launched. Yep. Who are your customers today? Who do you guys serve? Yeah, so our backstory is we started as college students at IU Bloomington. So that was really where we got lucky in the sense of who has a Big Ten school as their first client. So we had that. It was natural to kind of evolve into more and more colleges. And that was really our bread and butter and still probably makes up about 2/3, maybe 3/5 of our overall clients. But it's grown from there. So from colleges, everything from IU to Stanford and University of Florida and Yale, all over the country, we do pretty much a who's of colleges. We do a lot of cities ranging from smaller cities. So same thing with Bloomington, for example. We do Columbia, Missouri. We do bigger cities like Orlando and Dallas. But then it really goes into 3 other verticals, which are corporate fleets, airports, and hospitals. So hospitals, we're talking about the Mayo Clinic. Yeah. We're actually working on another deal with another big name hospital that kind of rivals the Mayo Clinic. Then we do airports. So this is Seattle. We do the airport in Columbus, and then corporate fleets, some of which I can name, some of which I can't just because of NDA. But Nike, I think, and Walt Disney Studios, we don't have NDAs with, so we can talk about those. Then a social media company and a phone maker in the Bay Area, if you could use your imagination, and a lot of really big name companies that have their own bus systems. You have Huli as a client? That's amazing.
No, Huli Labs.
Huli Labs. Nice. Give us a quick status of the business. Where are you on the journey, which you just did a little bit of that because you talked a little bit about the history, but any vanity stats you can share, key numbers, that way somebody who's listening kind of knows where you guys are on the journey.
Definitely growing. So the best way I can describe it, so our team is about 50, primarily based in Indianapolis, kind of bursting at the seams of our office. So we're looking for new space now.
You better be looking for new space. Yeah, I was just in your office like 2-3 weeks ago and it was packed.
We love our spot by Mass Ave, but it's hard if you can't fit everybody in there. So growing that way, but the way from a financial perspective that I'll paint it, we're really proud of making the Inc. 5000 list for the last 3 years in a row, just because that's not really in any way a popularity contest. It's just on financials. And then it's always a year lagging. So this year, we're going to more than double from last year in terms of finances. So
that's awesome.
Definitely still growing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When you think of competitors for DoubleMap, what comes to mind? Who do you think of?
So I'll kind of start with the backstory because the competitors, there's new ones all the time, but the way I look at them really stay the same. So I was a student at IU ultimately when I thought of this, and I was on student transportation board and in student government, and I didn't want to necessarily start a company to do this. I wanted to look at the marketplace and kind of do research to bring the best of breed to IU. And these guys were going to charge like $1 million plus. So there's one company, they're owned by a company that's owned by another company, and they're like the second biggest company in Canada. They're called Trapeze, owned by Valeris and Constellation Software. It's like the proverbial IBM of the space. And they were going to charge a ton of money. And there's a few others like that. Then there's some directly in our space, which we kind of consider it to be a Coke to a Pepsi, where I actually like having direct competitors that I respect and I think they have a good product, because ultimately that kind of pushes the envelope for us, vice versa, hopefully for them.
Yeah.
But as far as these really big players, the analogy I'll use is if you want to get from point A to point B, a car and a tank can get you from point A to point B. But very rarely do I see a scenario where you're kind of indecisive about what the right mode of transit is for you. I'll pick a car, the Army will probably pick a tank. So these guys, they'll go after these big systems, London, New York City, things like that, which we have products that can service those because we do have overlap with them. We're going to be a lot more competitive on cost, but that's not really our focus. We do Orlando, we do Dallas, but really our focus is on this mid-range transit system where anything from 1 to a couple hundred buses, something like that. But once you get into the thousands of buses, I will gladly suggest that you go with one of those guys.
And are you so if you get to Bloomington mm-hmm. client, right? Yep. So are you the entire operating system for operations for Bloomington, or do you plug into like a routing app and stuff like that? Or mm-hmm. Are you basically, when you go in there, is it like we become the platform that you run your bus system on?
So early on, all we wanted to do was track buses. And we thought that was like inventing fire and money was going to fall from the sky and we were going to buy an island. Turns out that, well, that's cool in a very good rider portion of the application. It's not necessarily what transit systems are going to pay us for.
Right.
So we really had to focus on helping different parts of their operations. So instead of going into, let's say, universities and then going into school systems like K through 12 and going into ambulances, we really tried to do that vertical integration piece and ask them, hey, what else can we do for you? And that's really how we built out our platform. So down in Bloomington, just about everything short of payroll we'll do for them.
Okay. Yeah. So mm-hmm. it's the full thing.
Yep.
Nice. Where do you see that? So just keep going down that path then. Mm-hmm. Where do you see that going when you look into the future? Is it more of those like rider systems that are invisible to the rider, right? Or is it more consumer facing where we're going to get better at making it easier to get a bus anywhere at any time mm-hmm. or whatever the case may be?
That's a great question. The way we really think about it, we've never been a business to consumer company. That's not the focus. The way we make our money, I mentioned, is analytics and things behind the scenes for administrators. But we do have that consumer facing kind of face of our application, and that's what we're best known for. So in most of these places, we don't do any advertising, anything like that, and it blows up. Because if you don't have bus tracking, and then all of a sudden you have bus tracking, you're going to ride the bus, it's great. It kind of becomes like water. You don't really value it unless you take it away, and then I want some water. So what we've started doing is thinking about what else we could do to leverage that, because we have millions and millions and millions of eyeballs. So one example that we've been working on, we're going to release here very soon, is mobile ticketing. So the idea is to kind of paint the picture. To collect fares, a lot of transit systems, crazy as it sounds, they actually lose money collecting money.
Unpack that for me.
Crazy. So it actually, to collect $1, the fare isn't that much, right? We're talking about 75 cents, $1.50, something like that. So it's not much money. And actually pay a human being to actually count all of that money, deposit in a bank, do all of that, costs them more than the actual money they collect. It's not like that everywhere, but that's still crazy to me when I heard that. They actually, in a lot of cases, collect money to prevent people from abusing the transit system and you're homeless or something like that. So that's one data point. The next one is if you kind of go the exact other side of the spectrum. Wealthier transit systems have these boxes on the buses where you put in $1, it counts it, lets you on. And these things cost $20,000 to $30,000 a pop. Crazy expensive. So there's really no middle of the road solution. So since we already have the app, millions of people have it, let's actually process credit card payments through there. And then if you can kind of picture yourself being on a train, when the conductor walks down the path, they can actually see your ticket. All they're really checking is to make sure that you and I and everybody else has the same ticket.
Yep.
So here on the phone, you can actually make the same ticket. You can make it a moving image so I can't take a screenshot, send it to you, and you use the same ticket as me. And then you color code them. So tell the driver in the morning, look for blue tickets that are moving. In the afternoon, look for green tickets that are moving. So if you and I and 15 other people board the bus with a green ticket in the afternoon, and then Bob, who has a counterfeit ticket, boards the bus with a pink ticket, the driver, without really doing anything, no additional hardware, nothing, can know that that's a fake ticket. So things like that, you're not really charging them a ton on hardware. They're not losing money based on counting money. And it actually leverages the fact that we have rider-facing apps.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
when you're positioning yourself in a sales cycle, well, maybe I'll back that up a little bit further. When you go into sell, how often is that part of an RFP where they're asking you and your 12 closest competitors to come in and make the pitch, which is horrifying and awful, versus you showing up at their door and saying, hey, there's another way to do this. We're here to help. And maybe it's not part of an RFP process. I'm assuming you do both of those to some extent. What does that look like?
We do. The business, and the reason we've never raised $1 of outside capital is because we do RFPs, which we can circle back to that. The soundbite I'll give, because this is truly how I feel, and we say this all the time at DoubleMap, the RFPs are for losers. So what I mean by that is that if our sales team, if an RFP hits the street and we don't know about it and we submit and we end up winning, great. But in that case, we're only really winning because of a price point or something else.
Yeah.
The idea is we want our sales team to do a good enough job to where either A, if they don't need to go to RFP, they pick us because we feel like we're the best overall solution. Or if they do go to RFP, then we at least know what they're looking for. We have a relationship with them. Obviously, they can't share certain things.
Set the standard, kind of.
Yeah, and we understand, that they want more capital-intensive projects and lower recurring fees, or vice versa, right? At the end of the day, the dollars still have to shake out to where the funding is there. But if I have a grant as a transit system, I want a lot more of the project to be paid up front, capitalized. If I'm a university and I get money from my students on a semester-by-semester basis, I don't want to spend a lot of money up front. I want it to be more recurring. And if you don't know that, you're basically just throwing a dart at a board and hoping. You might win some, you might lose some, but you're guessing. If you're doing a good job, and that's why I say RFPs are for losers, you know some of these things to where you can intelligently respond.
Nice. Mm-hmm. When you segment out the market and think about which geographic regions, which verticals, I am sure there's tons of ways you think about potential customers and how you might go after it. How much of that is driven by revenue potential? How much of that is driven by efficiency of operations? Like we already have support people or salespeople in that given region.
Yep.
And how much of that is driven by competition and responding to what others are doing?
So in the early days, I think we had to do a lot more guessing there because ultimately we didn't have any money. We had to build some features that we thought were going to be valuable, and we had to go for clients and RFPs in a lot of cases that we just saw on the street. And then we wanted to respond to that spec. Now what we do, since we do have 200 plus customers across the country, in a lot of cases we can ask them, or they have way better relationships than we ever could in their region, to where Green Bay will have a lot of influence over Appleton, Wisconsin, and over La Crosse, Wisconsin, where if we do a good job at one, they'll help us and they'll tell us in advance that, hey, these guys are going to be going to bid next year. Whereas otherwise, there's no way of really knowing until they actually go to bid. And those are 3 actual examples where we won one, and then it led to 2 more deals where we still had to be competitive. We still had to put a price quote together that was not astronomical by any means, but we knew what they were looking for. They knew that we were credible. It just made the process way better.
This is ignorance on my part. I don't even know if this is a thing. Is there overlap in busing systems? Like, does Green Bay subcontract some of their buses out to Appleton, so you might get routes that cross to suburbs and stuff like that? And how much of that do you have to deal with?
So you're actually spot on. So we started at IU, and we thought that, hey, we're doing IU's buses. It's going to be the same as Purdue. It's going to be the same as Ball State. It's going to be the same all over the country. As it turns out, IU is kind of like a blessing and a curse being our first client, because they have one of the most unique transit systems in the country. And I've seen all of them now. So IU actually runs their own buses through the university. And the city of Bloomington has their own buses, having nothing to do with the university. And the university actually pays Bloomington Transit some amount of money per year so that IU students can ride the bus for free. These guys, the green buses are Bloomington Transit, red buses are IU. They're physically in the same building. There's 2 managers, there's 2 sets of maintenance workers. There's actually a chain link fence down the middle of their supply closet, and they kind of trade parts over this fence. So that's awesome. Needless to say, the routes are the least of the things that overlap. Like everything there overlaps. So in that case, we're lucky we do have both systems. So it's easy for us. In some cases, we'll do a city system, but maybe the university has somebody else, or we'll do the university system. The city has somebody else. So an example would be, unfortunately for us, we do IUPUI and we love IUPUI. We don't do Indigo. And obviously the routes overlap.
Right. So thinking through product there. So if you have a city and 5 surrounding suburbs, I I'm going to make stuff up. I'm just assuming you don't actually have all these cities, but like you have Indianapolis, you have Carmel, Fishers, and Zionsville. Because Zionsville has buses? Probably not.
Soon.
But really? Seriously?
I'm kidding. Hopefully. Carmel has some buses now, though.
You have, so let's say you have maybe Chicago is a more realistic example.
Sure. No, I get what you're saying now.
So you have Chicago and you have, I'm drawing a blank, you have 5 suburbs around Chicago. Sure. At what point, because if you're doing everything but payroll, you have all the data, right? So in theory, you could come back to those cities and you could say, look, with this routing plan, which goes across city lines, we can allow you to take 7 buses out of off the road, right? So it's 7 fewer buses that you have to do maintenance on, and increase route efficiency by X%. And are you guys part of like a regional strategy where you can come in and because you have consolidated customer base within a given market, you can come in and help them run operations better?
So I'm obsessed with using data to try to improve efficiencies. That's like our value proposition from day one. But even if forgetting the suburbs for a second, just whatever transit system that we have as a client, we have so much data. And you can collect data in unique ways where, for example, the University of Cincinnati, they have a button that the drivers can press that says number of passengers left behind. So the idea is if you are waiting at a bus stop and a bus comes, but it's full and you can't get on, you were there on time, you would have ridden the bus, but there wasn't enough space. So they count that to where all of a sudden now we have data to say at noon, Tuesdays and Thursdays at the library, there's more demand. Let's add a bus. Same thing, we have these heat maps where you can actually see pickups and drop-offs for our on-demand system. So if you can imagine at a corporation, let's say they have a bunch of pickups at 9 a.m. at their central campus, but the bus depot is 5 miles down the road. Why is it a surprise every single morning that we have a bunch of requests at 9 a.m. at this one location and the buses have to drive there and we're behind schedule? Why not station the buses around this anticipated demand? So there's a lot of what we do. As far as improving routes, there's a million things that we can help them with. But this is where we work with public transit. And that's the blessing and the curse there, where we could have the greatest suggestion ever. And I'm not saying that we do, but we could. And let's just say that, Mike, you're a bus rider and I'm proposing that we change the route to where it's no longer going to go right by your house. You have to walk 2 blocks. Are you happy about that?
Got it.
So we need to get public approval from all of this stuff. Right. So that's what's interesting about our space is getting the right solution is about half the battle. It's convincing. And you have to go to these town halls. So if you've watched like Parks and Rec, where you go in and you
the documentary that is Parks and Rec.
Yeah. So it's basically like that, where I've been to some of these town hall meetings and everybody there means well, but at the same time, the most efficient and most correct solution doesn't always prevail.
Right. Right on.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
How have electric vehicles changed the game?
Electric vehicles, they're a little bit more expensive, but obviously less wear and tear and lower cost. So it doesn't really affect our business. We're for as many agencies as possible using them. The more kind of recent trend that we've seen is more and more agencies testing autonomous buses. So we did one at the University of Michigan where they had this, looks like a cube, and it's run on DoubleMap, so you can actually request it. It'll come and pick you up. I actually saw this thing, and you get in, and it's one of the most terrifying but exciting experiences to actually see it take off. So we've seen that University of Michigan did it. A few of our partners that actually are bus operators, they've tried it. And then there's a company called Easy Mile out of Europe that we're talking about kind of working together, and they're making a big splash in the US with those things.
So autonomous busing as an entry point into the market, is that more of the like point-to-point ad hoc pickup, or do you see that even on scheduled routes and all that, like just replacing busing as we know it?
So right now, the challenge is the tech is actually way outpacing the regulations and safety concerns.
Yeah.
So let's just say the tech's not 100% of the way there, but it works right now. It exists. The problem is for, say, the University of Michigan is they can't just release this thing on the street because not every single street kind of adheres to the regulations that you're allowed to use. So the whole ad hoc system, even though I think that's probably the easiest way to use it because I can request a ride with 3 people and the smaller bus, it works.
Right.
Right now, they're just picking individual routes where they know that the bus is going to stay on this route and every single piece of the street applies to the regulations.
Have you ever, again, any question I ask, you don't have to answer if it's too close to the secret sauce. Have you guys ever played around with or thought about integrating with other ride sharing applications or modes of transportation, right? So where you could be in a given market, let's say you're on IU campus and you go to get a bus, but there's not a bus available in the time frame, and it could automatically order you an Uber or a Lyft or whatever, right? It's basically like, no, I just need to get somewhere. You figure out, I'm trusting you, DoubleMap, to figure out the best and most efficient way to get there. Help me get it done.
I mean, you may not think it, but you're kind of hitting most of the questions exactly kind of on the head of what is happening in the space. So virtually every single transit system is asking for exactly that. Not every single one has the funding or kind of the wherewithal to actually do it because you need all the support from the community and all that. So the FTA, they released, it's called a Mobility on Demand Sandbox grant about 3 years ago. And they awarded it, I believe, to either 10 or I think it was 8 agencies, one of which was Dallas, Fort Worth. And they basically just gave them a pile of money, not too much, but enough to trial exactly what you're talking about. So they picked us, we actually co-wrote the proposal with them, and it's doing virtually what you're talking about. So the concept there, if you think about the Dallas area, it's really 3 cities in one. You have Dallas, you have Fort Worth, and you have Arlington.
Right.
So those 3 systems, they haven't been the most friendly as far as transit historically, but they said, okay, in this case, we're going to work together. You're going to have one app where you can see all 3 systems. You can buy one pass and it'll work across all 3. So you have one credit card, one pass, boarding any bus. It'll connect all 3 systems to get you from point A to point B. Oh, by the way, we have all these other vehicles to where the first mile, last mile, we want to give people options to get to transit. Because that's probably, to kind of go on a small tangent, the single biggest hurdle that transit has to overcome. So I would love to ride the bus, let's say in Indianapolis, but if I live 3 miles away from the nearest bus stop, am I going to walk or what am I going to do?
Right.
So if we can solve that first mile problem, I think that gets a lot more people to ride transit. So in Dallas, they have our tap ride solution, which is kind of an Uber for agencies who have their own buses, own drivers, own fare structure. So you can request a ride from your house and then it drops you off at a bus route or bus stop. And it even syncs the time to where you're not waiting there for more than 3 or 4 minutes. You get on the bus and basically it takes you all the way through the journey. And if you want to pay a little bit more, it actually has that Uber and Lyft spillover to where you basically put in point A to point B and it'll give you different modes of transit where if you want to take Uber and Lyft the whole way, great, here's what it costs. If you want to take Tap Ride the whole way, great, here's what it costs. If you want to take Tap Ride or Uber and Lyft to public transit and then walk the rest of the way or take an Uber the rest of the way, here's what it costs. So you have all these options. And the idea is it can connect 3 cities into one.
Right. That's awesome. All right. Since we're on the topic of the current market, why don't you predict out for me where the market is going? So
scooters everywhere.
Scooters everywhere. Well, that's sadly true, at least the fad. Fast forward 5 or 10 years into the future, what do you think transportation looks like? And then I'd love, after you do that for a little bit, maybe riff on how you are working to position your company to support that.
Yeah. Scooters actually, I think, for better and for worse, are a big part of that. So I would split it up, the market, into kind of 3 different segments. So you have long range transit. So if I want to get from here, let's say to the airport or to Bloomington, then there's mid range where I just want to get from somewhere in Indianapolis to somewhere else in Indianapolis, but it's a little bit too far to walk. And then there's micro transit where if I want to get from here in developer town over to Yats, what can I do? So all 3 of those I think need to integrate, and they will be integrated more. So going back to the example with Dallas is maybe I take a scooter from my house to the bus stop. I take the bus all the way down to somewhere in Dallas, and then I can take a Tap Ride or an Uber to the airport, the remaining leg, something like that.
Okay.
So I think that's more the immediate kind of next step. And I think the way we fit in there is we actually have kind of the glue that conjoins all of these, because ultimately public transit, it's not going to go away. I love Uber. I love Lyft. I use them all the time. But the idea is to complement the two systems together is, I think, how we do it, especially with Ubers. And we basically have a platform to do that. So if you take how we have, let's say 1 million eyeballs at a college campus or at a small city, something like that, public transit basically has a monopoly there. So if you want to ride public transit in whatever city, in this case, let's say Indianapolis, you don't really have a choice. You have Indigo or you don't have public transit. In Bloomington, I guess you have two. You have IU and BT, but let's just say they're one system. Purdue, you have City Bus, and so on and so forth. And we have kind of the lens into that ridership. So there, I think we can connect it to Uber and Lyft if you want to take a little bit further journey. But the middle part of the journey, I think, is us. And then beyond that, autonomous buses and scooters, I think, are more 5-10 years out if regulations support that.
Have you guys had to look at how your software would integrate with autonomous buses? Whether so just thinking through routing and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like at some point, one would think you would be dynamically generating routes because buses can just adapt and do that if there's no humans involved, right? So how, when you play forward that, and forget regulations here for a second, because it could be a year from now or 50 years from now from a regulatory perspective, right? So in a frictionless, Congressless world, how would you envision your software needing to change to support that? So when real autonomous vehicles are here and ubiquitous and all over the place, do you guys still exist, or have you pivoted into something else at that point because maybe there's not as much need?
Well, we don't own any buses. We don't employ any drivers. So the idea from a software standpoint, I think that only strengthens our argument, because it sounds crass and we never give this as a pitch to clients. But if you forget our fixed route product and you just think about our on-demand product, the pitch there is similar to what Uber and Lyft basically do as well. But for us, if you take IU, and I went there for 4 years, I had no idea we had a Safe Ride program. But there's basically a pool of vans and a pool of drivers and a pool of dispatchers. They're all employed at IU and they offer free taxi service, essentially. Now, all of those dispatchers, they get paid. So ultimately, my question then is, and all they do is they field calls from riders like me potentially. Then they radio the drivers that are out in the field and say, hey, Bill, or hey, Susan, where are you? How close are you? Can you handle another passenger? And then they eyeball it.
It's like the Holiday Inn courtesy shuttle.
Exactly. So in this case, we basically plug in an algorithm and we can figure out what is the most efficient method to actually pool all of these rides in a matching style. So it kind of operates like Uber Pool or Lyft Line, where maybe it picks me up first and drops you off next and picks another person up on the way. Or it can shuffle that and maybe it picks you up first, then it drops you off, picks me up, picks 3 more people up, and drops Susan off next. So it can make all of that more efficient. So for autonomous vehicles, we're helping cut out kind of the dispatcher, or at least repurpose the dispatcher to monitor the system to make sure it's running the best way instead of radioing drivers the whole time. In this case, we're basically talking about replacing the driver or repurposing the driver. So then it reduces the cost of running the system. You can add more buses to the road. Our algorithm will help match those to the most appropriate rides.
Are you guys only domestic here in the US? Are you guys overseas yet?
So we are. We have a few clients in Australia. I'm waiting for something to break so I can visit them, but so
that's
far so good.
That's very big overseas. That's not what I was expecting. Normally you hear, we're in Canada and South America.
Well, and we have quite a few clients in Canada.
All right.
Well. Yep.
So I guess they're not technically overseas, but all right. So interesting, Australia. So what has been some of the differences you've seen in kind of North American operations versus going into Australia, or when you look at other markets?
So as far as transit goes, kind of the way that I look at it is that Indianapolis is one of, and I love Indianapolis, so this is not meant to be anything other than constructive. We're one of the worst transit cities in the worst transit country in the world, or at least with the worst options. So Europe is years ahead of us. And I don't mean one country. I mean, like every single country in Europe has a more developed transit system than we do, which is why I think there's been so much opportunity for us being in America. Canada is way more developed than us. So that's where when you go to a place like Australia, which there's just a different kind of lay of the land there, they have first world kind of financing and infrastructure, roads, buses, all that, but they haven't had the technology. So I think that's a good opportunity for us. The next one beyond that, we're thinking probably more South America, but that's where we're waiting for infrastructure to catch up, things like that. But what's crazy, and I've been lucky enough to travel to different places in a previous job doing consulting, but you go to some places like Ethiopia and Nigeria, where you think of it as kind of this third world country, but the cell infrastructure is very developed. There's coverage nearly anywhere. And most people, no matter what their standard of living is, they've got a cell phone. So for us, it's actually a really exciting time because you can imagine virtually any country on the planet, there's cell coverage, and most people have smartphones at this point. And that's really all we need for our system to work. GPS being the last part, but obviously we have global coverage there. Nice.
If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you? And if they want to learn more about DoubleMap, how do they do that?
Yeah, DoubleMap.com. My name, for better or for worse, is very difficult to spell. So I own my own Twitter handle and email address. So it's ilya@doublemap.com is my email. And then my Twitter handle is ILYA REKHTER.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.